Today, the subject of the debate is one man. He is, of course, the Prime Minister. He is Boris Johnson. He's been in the news because he's been fined for attending parties that he says he didn't think were parties. But the big question today is whether it's time for him to go. Is Boris Johnson's time up? Tell me why you think Boris Johnson is still the man for the job.
Well, look, I think, he knew that he had broken the rules. He had a 9-minute party that there was some cake there. However, is it right for us to now replace a Prime Minister in a time of where there is a war in Europe and there is a nuclear madman on the loose? And we're coming back from COVID and we've got the cost of living crisis. Is it actually beneficial to face a leadership contest or face a general election now over what I believe is a pretty insignificant issue? Yes, okay, the morality of it is wrong, but does that really weigh up to what we could risk with losing of having, government infighting when they take a leadership contest, because now we've got the Conservative Party are fighting against each other. The actual leadership contest itself takes a while, potential general election. Is it the time now? I can't say it is now.
You don't think it is. Alice, you think that he should go. Tell us why.
I very much disagree with what you've just said. I think for the main fact that your reasoning is because there are bigger fish to fry in Ukraine, for example. Boris Johnson's leadership and what he's done for Ukraine, humanitarian aid, visiting Kiev, that's not particular to his leadership. Britain has been training the Ukrainian army since after the 2014 annexation of Crimea, for example. This can happen whether Boris Johnson is in office or not. And secondly, there's been instances throughout history where there's been a leadership change in an international crisis. Margaret Thatcher and the case of Kuwait is a case in point. And secondly, about him actually breaking the rules, I think the key thing that has been missed there is that he broke ministerial code and lied to Parliament. I am not against Boris Johnson in that way. I voted for him. I had huge hopes for him, for Britain. However, he also exposed the farcity, the stupidity of the rules that we all disagreed with in this room, if I'm right. So why now, when we have been so angry at him for so long, when there is clear evidence that the rules that he subjected us to, which were ridiculous, have been proved nonsensical, and the fact that he broke them and lied about it, it's basically saying, it's quite childish, it's basically saying, I'm very angry at you, but I don't want to do anything about it.
I think it's actually probably the reverse, because don't forget, these leadership contests, you aren't going to get rid of Boris and have somebody come in as a permanent Prime Minister the next day. It's going to distract the government, and do we want a government that is distracted? Probably not right now, no. And yes, okay, it happened before, but it doesn't mean it has to happen again. And I think it's quite childish to say, oh, he broke ministerial code or throwing out the toys of this very, in my opinion,
it's not childish.
It's insignificant.
It's law, and it's centuries of British
things
convention
going on together.
Well, also, he's been accused, I think, has he not, of more than one offence. So he's more than likely to be getting another fine coming, and there could be more than one fine. So those who use that as a defence to say, oh, it was only a 9-minute thing, it wasn't really a party, they're going to lose that argument, because at the end of the day, there's going to be other instances that they will have to defend.
This man will be held to account, but he'll be held to account at the next general election, which isn't
But he's not fit to lead the Conservative Party into the next general election. If you care about the future of the Conservative Party and for them to have any opportunity to rebuild the trust that has just been so blatantly broken, I mean, we'll see the extent of that in the council elections, then you do not want a leader that is so tainted to lead them. It's not fair, and it's not fair on the voters.
MPs, I think. If they believe that Boris isn't going to take them to victory in the next general election. I mean, their jobs are on the line for this man, so if they don't like him, they will get rid of him. They have that option there to put those letters into the 1922 committee and get rid of him. And when the whole Partygate broke initially, apparently, loads of them were doing it. Apparently, every night the media was saying, we're going to get the letters tonight. They're going to hit the number. They're going to hit the number. We never did.
They never did.
But what ended up happening is the MPs were saying, hang on a minute, this is ridiculous. And they were actually withdrawing their letters from the 1922 committee. And people have the opportunity, if the public are angry at Boris, which they are, to vote him out at the next general election. We have that opportunity. And to say people are going to forget by then is not true. If it
but
was
it could be too late, couldn't
enough,
it? Because if you wait till the next general election and he's lost the trust of the public, then he loses all that red wall, loyalty that he won. And if, in fact, you get to the next election and he loses it, and Labour get in, then that would have been a massive act of self-harm by the Tories, won't it? So you can't wait for that, can you?
But I think that's what the MPs need to figure out.
I think the best thing for the Conservative Party is for Boris to represent everything that's gone wrong, the cost of living crisis, the hypocrisy and the shambles that was our lockdown policy, and for him to resign. So then we can start rebuilding and move forward from that. Because also all these red wall Tory MPs who have been newly elected, they were greatly concerned about lockdown. They disliked it because their voters were hit harder. And
do you think a backbencher will stand a chance of winning, or is it going to be somebody in that cabinet who is complicit in those decisions going to take over? Is there going to be a real difference, though? Or are you just going to get somebody like Sunak, somebody like, I don't know, I would love Priti Patel, but that's not going to happen, to become the Prime Minister and pretty much do the exact same thing?
Well, what's interesting to me as well is that I quite like Boris Johnson when he's wounded, because when he's wounded and he's in fear of losing his job, he suddenly comes out with all the stuff that he was meant to have been elected to do. Today, suddenly we're sending, illegal migrants to Rwanda. You know, suddenly all the COVID restrictions disappeared when it turned out he was probably going to be fined and given a penalty notice for attending parties in Downing Street. So actually, you could argue, if you want to, that it's better having him sort of on the rack, if you like, because he's actually going to do. Because I'm not angry with Boris really for going to a party. I don't really care.
I'm just angry at lockdowns.
Much. But I'm very angry about the net zero nonsense.
Oh, me too.
Which we don't 100%. Want, and nobody wants, as far as I know, apart from Remainer types who live in Putney and drive around in electric Volvos. I also want him to solve immigration, which he hopefully is on the way to doing. And also, we need, as you say, to tackle the cost of living crisis and to bring taxes down, because we're now the highest taxed country as Britain since the Second World War.
And for a Conservative government as well. But I think what you were saying about Rishi Sunak possibly becoming Prime Minister, that won't happen.
I mean, he's Boris Johnson
goes because of the penalty charges. Rishi Sunak will go, and he also, has a distinct lack of political capital.
Well, there's a distinct lack of conservatism with Rishi Sunak, isn't it?
Yeah.
And he's got to be one of the worst chancellors I think I've ever seen.
Well, he, supposedly was a fiscal conservative, and then, maybe lockdown broke it. But the one thing as well is that with the whole, going back to the whole international crisis, we can't have a national crisis alongside that. Well, look at France. They're in the midst of a general election.
Yes, but
so
they had a scheduled general election. There is a real difference between us having a leadership contest and springing on a general election and a leadership contest that we don't need, to the fact that France have as in the same way we do, we had the Fixed Term Parliament Act, a pre-planned election that was there and planned before Ukraine ever happened, and they have to have that election because, well, democracy, isn't it?
I mean, one of the arguments that people make, Alice, all the time is that it was the public that elected Boris Johnson. It should be the public that get rid of him.
Yeah.
What do you say to them?
Well, I think you can go off polling on that, but I think, to be honest, with the role of Tory MPs, it is incredibly clear to a lot of people that the government does not care about them. The cost of living crisis is one thing, but also for university students with the interest rates, we were going to pay a price for furlough, which we didn't benefit from, and now we're paying for it. Lo and behold, people are surprised they shouldn't be. And with the, as you say, the net zero, the heat pumps, people are angry, and I think Boris Johnson represents a phase of policy making, of state of living, which people want to move on from.
Yeah, but you have to understand that politics is almost a game of winning, and ultimately, it's not even a case of these people lose their seats. These Member of Parliaments will lose their careers, they'll lose their jobs, their ability to feed their kids and their house.
Out by the wheel.
Well, that's always going to be the risk for them, though.
So if they feel as if Boris Johnson isn't going to get them back in their seat, back in Parliament, back in their job, and back with that 80 grand salary over their head come 2024, they will get rid of him. There's no reason for them not to, because their jobs are on the line. So if they don't trust him, and if they don't feel like the public back him, they'll get rid of him. But what they feel is if, and the majority of the public feel is if, come 2024, people are going to realise that this was ridiculous. And is it right to disregard the fact that we had one of the best vaccine rollouts in the world? We were the first country to become one of the freest from COVID. In my opinion, the UK has done more than anybody else for Ukraine, and Zelensky has even said that Boris Johnson has been the best and the most consistent leader on Ukraine. We had one of the fastest growing economies in the G7 when we come out of COVID, and we finally got Brexit done, and no Conservative PM could do it. Is it right to disregard all of that good things for a Christmas party? you know, it is a seemingly insignificant
I mean, people do say,
issue.
don't they, that Boris got most of the big decisions right.
Yeah.
Well, he was still the guy that put us into lockdown in the first place. He was still the guy that put us into a second lockdown, introduced the tier system, introduced the, you know, go to pubs with a Scotch egg, not with a Scotch egg.
I mean, I think all of that was ridiculous, but the whole world...
I mean, he did an awful lot of stuff that was pointless.
The whole world was consumed by that ridiculousness. I mean, I don't
So then why now, when it's this perfect evidence before you, that you were right and that these, you know, lockdown skeptic arguments were right and that it was ridiculous, why now are you stepping back? Is it because of Ukraine? Is that really what informs the fact?
No,
and the reason why that we came out of lockdown was because Boris Johnson knew he had no political capital to keep us in one because of Partygate.
I think the biggest thing is that the largest question now is, should Boris resign over Partygate? The answer is no, because if he should resign, the things he should be resigning over are the fact that A, he put us in lockdowns in the first place, and B, they're overseeing a catastrophic cost of living crisis. Should he resign over a party? No, there are bigger things for him to resign over, and he hasn't done.
Like lying to Parliament?
Well, I don't know if he has lied to Parliament. He will tell you
he said he inadvertently misled. I think he misled them. But
that's the rule. I mean, it's a political exit strategy, and it's something that politicians say all the time. It's like Bill Clinton, who invented it, who said, I didn't tell any lies because at the time I thought it was the truth. And you go, well, that's fine, but it's nonsense. But people will then go, well, you can't actually prosecute that. You just have to take him at his word. And if he says he thought he was telling the truth, I think in his head, he doesn't think it was a party. There are lots of people who don't think that having somebody bring you birthday cake in an office is a party, even though nobody else could do it. I don't think it really was a party.
And we don't know about the second fine.
Is this about the birthday
so he can't really comment. The fine that he received.
Yes, well, the thing he's so far been penalised for is the birthday party, which took place on his birthday. There were too many people in the office. People have said that he should have told them they can't do that, they shouldn't bring him any cake, blah, blah, blah. You know, the second one might be for a leaving party that somebody had, but he certainly wasn't at the big drinks party, which was the one where they were wheeling alcohol up and down Whitehall.
Yeah, I think a lot of the parties he wasn't at.
He said he had no awareness of any other parties happening.
And it's hard for him.
You probably don't think a birthday cake
I think it's quite hard not to be aware when people working in your office are wheeling booze up and down the street.
Yeah, but he wasn't there when they were doing that.
He
wasn't there. So the point is that he can defend that. He can say he wasn't aware of it. He can say that he didn't know. It doesn't make him look very clever. It doesn't make him look very competent as a leader.
I just don't
I don't think there's enough evidence to say that he is a proven liar in Parliament, and he said something which was untrue. He might have said something that was untrue, but whether he lied or not is the question.
Whether he intentionally
lied.
Another question is that I've got a question about this whole situation, is that Jeremy Corbyn broke the rules, Stephen Kinnock broke the rules.
Not Prime Minister.
Keir Starmer, yes, but they also voted for the rules. He didn't make the rules, but they voted for it. And these were the people that were pushing for harder, more gruesome, more callous lockdowns. They wanted it. They also broke the rules, but they didn't receive fines. Beth Rigby and Kay Burley coming out on their pedestal, they broke the rules. Again, they didn't receive fines. They got 6 months off unpaid leave. I'd love 6 months off of work.
Yeah, but you wouldn't want to go to a party with Kay Burley.
No, I wouldn't. Yeah, I think that'd be punishment enough. But you know what I mean? So would we have the same reaction, was it Keir Starmer? Would they have the same reaction should have Keir Starmer been PM? And should we have the same reaction for Keir Starmer and Jeremy Corbyn because they contributed to these rules?
I think all of it, we can say, proves that the rules were nonsensical, weren't they?
I think this is the biggest takeaway that we have to make from this whole situation, is that the people who are getting the data minute by minute, day by day, were not scared enough to not have these parties. So why on earth are we now, we've still got people saying, you know, we should pursue zero COVID, we should be wearing masks. No, because clearly when we're in the height of lockdown, the people that were getting the data weren't scared enough, and there's a reason why they weren't scared. It's because they had nothing to be scared about.
And but then why, when you want to hold these people to account, you are
they
not?
Will be held. They will be held to account. This is not a question of whether we're not going to be holding them to account. We will, but in 2024, when everybody
and the party is still hugely tainted by this crisis.
I mean, it's democracy. If people don't like the party, they won't vote for it.
While he's being accused of this, he is actually now doing the things that you voted for example, and perhaps win the next, you know, for example, with this business with Rwanda, if that works, I've had loads of communications today, Twitter, other social media, people saying, if this works, he's already won the next election.
Oh, 100%.
Because this is the big issue that people care about.
I think there's big issues that he's already won on already.
What do you think, Alice?
Well, but it took such a mistake for him to actually implement those
Does that matter, though? If you get what you want, do you care why?
Yeah.
Well, in a way, I think it's sort of like, oh, I took this way for you, but I'll just shove that and you'll be happy. It was like, you know, Boris saving his bacon by firing certain people after Partygate came along. I mean, people don't trust him.
Do you think...
He's not a good figurehead for the Conservative Party.
Does that matter, though? Do you need to trust the Prime Minister?
Yes.
If he's in charge come 2024, do you think the Conservative Party will win the next general election, yes or no?
At the current rate, I don't think so. I don't think the turnout will be big enough. I don't think they'll encourage Red Wall voters to vote for them again.
What do you think, Mike?
I don't think the Labour Party's ever going to get back into government.
No, I don't think they will either.
Because I don't think they can get into government without having the seats they used to have in Scotland. No. They used to have a complete, you know, sort of ownership of Scotland, lock, stock and barrel. They've lost all of that to the SNP. And without... they could possibly do some kind of coalition deal with the SNP. And do you
think, if we think about this now, and we've had a look at Boris's premiership and what he's had to face not only a global pandemic, but a war in Europe, which is something that, you know, doesn't occur every day. Should he come the next election cycle and he wins, and he has the opportunity to have a normal premiership without these things, look at what he's been able to achieve that no other leader has done. No other leader has taken immigration seriously. The other leaders couldn't get Brexit done. He's done it. So if we take him out of this situation where he's had two massive crises that no Prime Minister could have ever predicted and give him what I would say a normal premiership, he would probably be, and I think, one of the best Prime Ministers we will have. I genuinely think it.
Well, Alice, one final word from you, because I'm going to have to make my decision.
I don't think he's going to be the best Prime Minister we've ever had. I think he's still tainted, and I think given the scale and the magnitude of what has happened and the fact that the lockdowns have been proved to be so shambolic and wrong, it does not make sense now when the evidence is clearly presented before us to back down.
Every politician wanted these lockdowns. It wasn't just Boris.
Yes, but not all of them were Prime Minister.
I mean, bizarrely, only the Lib Dems actually
other than maybe Steve Baker, but they're red herrings. They're going to come nowhere near the leadership contest. I mean, they won't even make it through the first round. No. All of those who would be up for the leadership contest all wanted lockdowns.
I think
so did the opposition. So I don't think that's really an argument.
If the Conservatives do win the next election, they will not nearly have the landslide majority that they enjoy now. And I think this is a vast, hugely wasted opportunity.
Well, I think that was a fascinating debate. Sophie made some great points. So did you, Alice. I mean, I think the idea that Boris Johnson is going to be one of the greatest Prime Ministers ever, I think that's not going to be playing for anybody, I'm afraid. But never mind that. I think that there is a risk that Boris could lose an election. But at the moment, I think I'm going to side with Sophie because I don't think it's time for him to go. No. I thought it was time for him to go in November, funnily enough, but I've changed my mind now, which is my prerogative because it's my show. So thank you both for coming. I was going to give the point to Sophie, so it's 1 to Sophie, 0, I'm afraid, to Alice. But we'll do this again. You'll have a chance to get back at her. Who knows? I mean, you can both be right. And it could all be over within a few months. We shall see. This has been Mike Graham's Political Punch-Up on Talk TV. See you next time.